Welcome back to Donington Park, everybody, for the penultimate round of the 2018 BRSCC Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. This is going to be entertaining. There is a championship on the line. There are two drivers in contention for the championship with 2 races to go, and there are 2 points separating them. Jack Harding is 2 points behind Luke Herbert coming into this race. They arrived at Donington Park yesterday tied on points, and Luke took the victory from pole position, led every lap. It was all quite dull and uneventful, really, except it wasn't, because this is the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. There was a lot going on, and Jack Harding scythed his way through the field from 14th on the grid and arrived right on Luke Herbert's tail with a couple of laps to go. But try as he might, he couldn't find a way past his big championship rival. He finished in 2nd place, though, and bagged 98 points as a result. So the gap is now an enormous 2 points, with just a pair of races to go. The conditions today, though, as you can see, are not very pleasant. Yesterday it was bright, it was sunny, it was even quite warm when the Mazdas were out on the circuit for their first 20-minute race of the weekend. Well, unfortunately for this one, the weather has closed in well and truly, and we're expecting a wet day throughout. A sodden track it is that greets the drivers then as they head in very lively fashion out onto their green flag lap, but the race has not yet started. There is Luke Herbert, then the all-blue number 1 car at the front of the field, with Aidan Hills, his teammate, alongside him. And there, weaving in the middle of the field, the blue and white number 43 car is Jack Harding, the man who is 2nd in the championship. Luke, of course, is looking for his 2nd championship on the bounce, because he is the reigning champion. He won last year's championship with races to spare. Well, we know that this one is going to go down to the last race, because regardless of what happens in this race, Luke Herbert cannot take the title in this one. It will go down to the last race. The question is going to be, what is the gap between them, and which of them will it be who is leading the championship going into what will be a reversed grid championship finale, remember, because they'll flip some of the positions somewhere inside the top 10 will be reversed based on the results of this race to form the grid for the race later on. So even if one of them finishes a bit further down the top 10 than the other, they will then get the situation reversed on the grid for the final race. So it's all going to go down to the wire, but this is the sort of the prelude to that race. This is what will set up the decider later on, and this is going to be, I'm sure, despite the conditions, an awesome race even. Awful conditions, but awesome racing, we hope. So we've got, as I said, at the front of the grid, Luke Herbert on the pole position. The grid for this one based on the 2nd fastest lap times in the qualifying session yesterday, which took place in drying conditions, I believe. There were a few showers out there. Speaking to a few of the drivers yesterday who said they were actually hoping for wet weather today, because they felt that they were stronger in the wet than they are in the dry. And well, we'll wait and see whether or not that is true in the next few minutes or so. But yes, it will be Luke Herbert then who has the pole position, and alongside him will be Aidan Hills, and Aidan Hills is one of those drivers who was saying to me yesterday evening that wet conditions today would maybe play into his hands actually quite nicely, and he lines up there on the front row of the grid. And I can confirm, by the way, just to interrupt myself, that we will get 2 green flag laps, and that the 2nd green flag lap counts as the first lap of the race, essentially. It's a 20-minute race. The clock, as you can see, has started ticking. This is, I think, going to be standard procedure throughout the day, because the weather conditions have changed considerably from yesterday, and so the decision being taken to give them an extra green flag lap, but we're pushed for time today, so it will count as the start of the race. So the race officially has started, but they will re-grid and have a standing start at the end of this lap, with Luke Herbert and Aidan Hills on row 1 together. Will Stacey, winner at Silverstone at the start of the year, is on row 2, with Steve Roberts, who's back in his 2nd car this year after the first one got written off at Castle Combe, and he's on the 2nd row of the grid for this one, looking for a good result. James Blake Baldwin, who could be a spoiler in the pack, he nicked the fastest lap points away from Jack Harding yesterday. He starts 5th, with Sam Tatler 6th. Johnny Greensmith 7th. They worked overnight to get that car fixed after a fairly hefty shunt yesterday, and he has Gary Townsend alongside him. Gary is the leading Masters contender on the grid in 8th. Then we have Alec Livesley and Simon Baldwin, with Jack Harding 11th this time, so his 2nd fastest lap time in qualifying was marginally better than his 1st fastest lap time, and so he started 14th yesterday, 11th today. Colin Bysouth is alongside him on the 6th row of the grid. Row number 7, we have got Will Stevenson and James Kell, with Carl Garnett and James Harris. James is fairly handy in the wet, I seem to remember, and he starts on the 8th row together. 9th row for Lee Patterson, Clio Cup 8. race with Tom Parker alongside. Jack Sycamore and Nick Rutter round out the top 20. It's a big old grid there. We've got 30 cars due to take the start. Mitchell Hale is next alongside Richard Wickland. Then Alex Miller and Javier Brook is 24th on the grid. There's still more to come though, because then we have on the next row of the grid George Grant and Christian White together. Christian White, former ML2 racer, not having a great time of it this weekend, unfortunately. He's 25th, George Grant is 26th. Then it's Mark Swarbrick and Daniel Morris, with John Stack and Bradley Kent, who didn't set a lap time in qualifying, but the younger brother of Lewis Kent, TCR racer, starts at the back of the grid. And Lewis, I'm sure, will be out on the pit wall cheering on his brother as he heads out onto the circuit in very, very tricky conditions. But maybe Bradley can report back to Lewis for his TCR races later on and let him know exactly what the conditions are like. Pretty miserable, I'm sure, will be how he describes them. Diving into the pit lane, we had a car then. Not quite sure who that was that was coming in. One of the green cars from a bit further down the order has peeled off into the pit lane. It's Lee Patterson I can see out of my window. So Lee Patterson has come in. Car number 9, making his debut in the MX5 Super Cup, or certainly if he's raced in it before, he hasn't done so for quite a long time. So one car will not take the start from the grid. Now, is this a problem or is this a strategy? Lee is a very experienced driver. Maybe he's decided that he wants to start from the pit lane. No, it looks like there's a problem. He's misting up, is he? Yes, he can't see already. He's got visibility issues down in the pit lane, so Lee Patterson will take the start from the pit lane, having hopefully got that sorted. The rest of them, all 29 of them, are about to head towards Redgate Corner and head into the unknown with a championship on the line. Luke Herbert versus Jack Harding is going to be fascinating to watch as it develops over the race, but there are plenty of other hungry drivers out there too. Lights out, away we go, and Luke Herbert gets a decent start from pole position. Aidan Hill's trying to go with him up the inside line from James Blake Baldwin with a really good start. They're 3 and 4 abreast already. Johnny Greensmith tries to poke up the middle as well, but it's Herbert on the inside, it's Hills on the outside line, and Aidan Hills might have the grippier side of the road here. Yes, he does. And Aidan Hills goes through, and Luke Herbert gets a whack in the tail there from James Blake Baldwin. So they all get through, a couple of them running wide, but I think they're all pointing in vaguely the right direction. It's a bit boggy out on the grass there, but they are all going to get going again, and it is Aidan Hills that leads the way. It's second place for Luke Herbert. Sam Tatler there going for third, and then gets absolutely mugged through the middle of the Crater curves. Oh, Jack Harding nearly with a collision further back. It's all getting very dicey indeed as they tippy-toe their way down into the old hairpin. Through the right hand they go. Jack Harding, I think, has lost places of anything off the start. He's not really made any forward progress as they all continue now to slip and slide their way around. There is Lee Patterson, so he has rejoined the field at the back from the pit lane. At the front, spin further back for Simon Baldwin, right in front of Jack Harding. Let's hope they all get through that okay. At the very front, it's Hills from Herbert from James Blake Baldwin. That will be in third position. I'm waiting with bated breath, though, to see who appears behind. Yes, Jack is still there. Jack Harding is still going and has therefore gained a place out of all of that. Through Coppice they go once again, this very tricky right-hander, and we're about to see Jack Harding. There he goes, flashing through the screen ahead of Gary Townsend and Carl Garnett. Everyone just trying to mind their P's and Q's as much as they can in the early stages here. For the race lead, though, it is Aidan Hills that has it. Luke Herbert, at the moment, will be fairly happy with second place, I think. It's almost side by side for third there as Will Stacey looks up the inside of James Blake Baldwin. Can't make the move stick, though, down to the chicane, and the safety car immediately is scrambled. This will presumably be because of the car that we saw spinning. Yes, I thought it would be a miracle if Simon Baldwin wasn't collected by someone, and unfortunately Richard Wickland has collided with the rotating car, and so Simon Baldwin, the stepbrother of James Blake Baldwin, who runs in third position at the moment, collected by Richard Wickland, the pair of them out of the race, and so the safety car has to be called. So at the end of opening lap then, it's Aidan Hills that leads the way. It's Luke Herbert in second, James Blake Baldwin third, and Will Stacey fourth. Fifth is Johnny Greensmith, having started seventh, but really the real miracle is that he got the car out there at all after his accident yesterday. And rounding out the top six is Steve Roberts. Jack Harding, by the way, gained one position, so he is into 10th place now, but he only gained one place. Here's a replay of the start. James Blake Baldwin getting quite aggressive up the inside line there, but the grip is on the outside, and we say this all the time in the wet, and Aidan Hills, who himself is fairly confident in the wet, knew where to go. He went round the outside. Luke Herbert almost stopped midway through the corner, got a real whack from James Blake Baldwin, completely unintentional. I think James himself was being pushed by Will Stacey, and there was one car that ran wide onto the grass and was able to rejoin from further back down the order. Tom Parker, I think that was, wasn't it, that went off at Redgate and rejoined, albeit slightly delayed. So, deep breath, everybody. We've only done one lap of this, and already things being brought to a pause, but hopefully this shouldn't take too long to deal with. Of course, the cars are clearly in a dangerous position there, so they need to be recovered. The marshal's in attendance already, or one marshal is anyway, and the rest of them, when it's safe to do so, will join in the live snatch vehicle making its way round as well. So It's quite handy here at Donington Park. We have a live snatch in operation, so if a car goes off, then you send out the live snatch vehicle, and it really just speeds the whole process up, because it can negotiate the gravel and get to the car an awful lot better than a truck or a flatbed could. So the live snatch vehicle making its way around at the planes there to pick up the cars, and there you can see just how tricky the conditions are. On the racing line, it's wet enough. If you go offline, though, it's like driving into a lake. It is so wet, and we made the point a few times today in the other races that Donington Park is anything but flat, and so in the dips, the water collects and it forms these rivers that run across the track. There's one down through the Crater Curve, there's one up at Schwantz Curve, which is where the cars, near where the cars have come to rest from that first lap incident, and the river of water runs from one side of the track to the other, and if it gets really deep and you catch it wrong, you will just aquaplane straight off the circuit. So it really does take an awful lot of concentration. It's not easy necessarily to concentrate in these cars, though, because they don't have roofs, so the drivers get a bit wet and a bit cold, and water can get into places where it's not supposed to, and that adds to the challenge of racing a Mazda MX-5, either one of these Mark III cars in the Super Cup, or of course the Mark 1s. And the Mark 1 Championship is still going strong, and their championship decider will be taking place here at Donington Park in a week's time, so there's lots of Mazda racing for you to enjoy these days, in fact more than previously, because the BRSCC this season brought in the MX-5 Super Series as well, which is a non-championship series of races for these cars, for the Mark III Super Cup type cars, and a lot of the Super Cup drivers do compete in both the Super Cup and the Super Series. But that really has become a good proving ground for drivers before they make the step up into this, what is a highly competitive championship. You got a glimpse there of the damage to Simon Baldwin's car. You can only imagine there is similar damage to the front of Richard Wickland's car, but they have moved at least one of the cars out of the way, so hopefully we should be able to go racing fairly shortly. Aidan Hills, your race leader, wants a winner this year. In fact, wants a winner in his career of racing in the MX-5 Super Cup. He finally took that first victory of the year back at Alton Park, where he defended heavily to keep Luke Herbert at bay. Well, he's going to have to do the same sort of thing, I think, today to keep Luke behind him. Luke will, for the time being, be fairly happy with second place, but he knows that Jack Harding will be coming, and he saw that yesterday. He saw Jack just picking his way through the field, and actually Aidan and Luke worked together quite nicely at the start of yesterday's race. They pulled away from the rest of the field. They didn't fight each other too much. As into the pit lane comes, now who's that? Car number 15 that has made its way down pit lane. That is Daniel Morris, who has damaged potentially the front right corner. That wheel didn't look quite right to me. I'm no mechanic, but I'm not sure it's supposed to be pointing at that angle. So I know he's going to pull back down the pit lane. So what do I know? Off he goes again, rejoining the back of the crocodile queue, which he should be able to close up on. But yes, back to yesterday's race. Luke Herbert and Aidan Hills pulled away from the rest of the field, and they had this plan down, really. I don't think Aidan was going to attack Luke particularly. He was quite happy to sit in second place and support Luke on the run to the flag. But then the safety car came out midway through and closed everyone back up, and all of a sudden Jack Harding was right back in it. Well, the safety car coming out a bit earlier this time, so the field hadn't really had time to string itself out. They were still fairly closely bunched. And it looks as though the safety car is actually going to stay out another lap, I think. The lights are still flashing as it drops down the hill towards the Robert chicane. Good news for Aidan Hills and Luke Herbert in a way, because this is taking time off the race that Jack Harding could have used to try and make even further forward progress. We'll see Jack in a moment there in the background. His first target when we do go racing will be James Harris, who is another driver who's come up from the Mark 1 ranks a few years ago, and now in, I think, his second year of Super Cup racing. First full season, though, I believe. Weaving left and right, trying to keep some sort of temperature in the tyres, but that's easier said than done in these conditions. They run on a sort of semi-slick, grooved tyre in all conditions, so regardless of whether they are racing in the dry or wet, they run the same tyre, and those tyres can deal with almost all conditions. But we are now verging on the point that, you know, no matter how good your tyres are, you're not going to have any grip in this sort of weather. So I think for all of them it's going to be really very dicey when we do go racing. We should hopefully be able to do so at the end of this lap. There we get a good view of the Craner Curves and the old hairpin, and actually the standing water is not as bad as I've seen it. You can see Luke Herbert there running through a puddle. on the run down the hill, and if you get too close to those curbs, then you will just aquaplane straight off, I think. But this is actually a good opportunity for the drivers, and you can see them doing it. They're sort of exploring behind the safety car whilst they've got a bit of a chance to have a look at what the conditions are like. They're sort of exploring where the grip is and where the worst of the standing water is, and this is quite a handy opportunity for them under a slightly less pressure than they usually would be under in race conditions, to just see what's what really and try and figure out exactly where they need to be when we go racing, which hopefully should happen this time. I noticed that the recovery vehicle, the live snatch vehicle, was on its way back to its post then as the field arrived at McLean, so hopefully as they come out of Coppice the lights should go out on the safety car. We hope they will, because there is a lot more racing to be done in this one. 8 minutes left on the clock, and for reference, by the way, at the moment James Blake Baldwin has set the fastest lap, and he did that under safety car conditions, so we will see that beaten. But remember, that is worth a vital 2 championship points, and yesterday those 2 points were going to Jack Harding until James Blake Baldwin nicked the fastest lap in the closing stages. Well, Aidan Hills is really stacking the field up here as we get ready to go racing. The safety car pulls into the pit lane, and with just over 7.5 minutes left on the clock, they accelerate out of the Robert chicane, back across the start-finish line, and Aidan Hills is the only one who can see where he's going, really, because he has clear road in front of him. Behind him, there, everyone else fighting for visibility. They fan out left and right, trying to find a bit of clear air as they drop down the hill in towards Redgate Corner, and it is Johnny Greensmith there, the white and blue car, number 2 on the outside line, trying to find his way past this sea of blue cars in front of him. The 2 side by side and sideways in front of him there were Will Stacey and James Blake Baldwin, one in the gravel further back there. Didn't quite catch who that was. Will Stevenson possibly, I think, wasn't it, who had gone skating into the gravel. Greensmith does pick up 1 position, almost. Will Stacey is still fighting back. There's Will Stevenson, who's fighting his way back onto the trap, and he'll be right at the tail end of the field. Down the hill they go. I think Jack Harding didn't get past James Harris on the restart. He was trying to, I noticed, but wasn't actually able to make the move stick. So the positions as they were, that's that puddle I was talking about, and it catches out, not for the first time this race, unfortunately, Tom Parker. That's his second little excursion he's had already. Up towards McLean's they go, though, and Aidan Hills still leading the way. Luke Herbert second, Blake Baldwin third, Will Stacey is fourth, and Johnny Greensmith still fifth. So yeah, it is as you were at the front of the field, but how hard is Aidan Hills going to make this for Luke Herbert? Aidan will want the win, I know he will. He's not going to just move over and let Luke go, but at the same time, Aidan, he drives with a wise head on his shoulders. He knows the situation here. He knows that he can't really get into any fisticuffs here with Luke. Luke needs to finish this race, otherwise his championship hopes are in tatters. So it's a really interesting psychological battle going on out there now as they drop down to the chicane. There is Bradley Kent from the back of the grid, the number 38 car, started 30th. He's no longer 30th because a few others have had dramas as they splash their way through the chicane again. There's Steve Roberts, former BMW Compact Cup champion, twice champion in fact in that series. As across the start-finish line they go. The leaders have not changed positions. There has been a bit of shuffling behind though, I noticed, because James Harris has got himself into 7th position. Jack Harding has gone 9th, so Harding has gained 1 position, and there he is. He's got past Colin Bysouth, and now he's trying to find a way past Sam Tatler if he can. Side by side there, James Kell up the inside of Carl Garnett, and the AK Automotive car, yeah, just loses the position as they run through Redgate Corner. Now, Luke Herbert is under quite a lot of pressure here from James Blake Baldwin and Will Stacey, who we know is good in the wet. Will is really giving James work over too as they drop down into the old hairpin. Will Stevenson, I think, is quicker, but just can't quite get himself on the grippier side of the road so as to be able to make the move stick. But you can see them fighting for grip in these abysmal conditions. That's just taken a bit of the pressure off Luke Herbert, but it changes corner by corner. As one driver has a good run through a turn, they can suddenly take chunks of time out of another, and it's going to ebb and flow, I think, as we go. Blake Baldwin has now improved upon that fastest lap, unsurprisingly, on the first full flying lap, a 1:42.2. Just to compare that, though, to yesterday's dry fastest lap, it was a 1:23, so we're almost 20 seconds off the pace that we were running in the dry conditions yesterday afternoon. Back through Coppice they go, though, and the 4 blue cars at the front of the field. Oh, dear. James Kell, Tom Parker again, and I think Colin Bysouth have all come together on the inside at McLean. Oh, there's another car in there too, and the red flag is coming out. But who was that other car? Because that looked almost Jack Harding-esque, and he was running with Colin Bysouth, who I'm pretty sure is involved in that. So let's see if we can piece this together. The red flag is out. The race is being stopped. And Jack Harding's there. It's all right. Jack Harding did get through. It was another blue and white-ish coloured car, I think, that was involved. Well, that is a bit of a shame because I don't think we're likely to see a restart for this, but Jack Harding losing points there. Now, yes, we need to, well, let's figure out what happened here first, but it's already sort of happened. Oh dear, Carl Garnett in there. We've got Sam Tatler. Christian White somehow was involved in all of that. That is an enormous accident. Actually, there's a car there with an awful lot of damage on the far side, so no wonder the red flags have been thrown. That was a big old shunt up at the top of the hill. Right, let's get the calculator out. Let's figure out the points. So Luke Herbert will win the race and get 100 points. So that's fairly simple. He now moves on to 1,770 points, because you get 100 points for a race win, so you can imagine that the points do start to build up. Jack Harding, now the results will probably go back a lap, so he may only score points for 10th, which means that he'll score 198, 96, 94, 92, 90, 88, 86, 84, 82, I reckon, as we see the carnage there up at the top of the hill. Let's hope everyone's all right. 91 appears to be another one of the cars involved. That would be Jack Sycamore, the orange car that I saw that was in there, but 6 or 7 cars in total going off at the top of the hill. And unfortunately, in these conditions, you sort of expect things like that to happen. You don't want them to, but with the field so closely bunched, then that is always a risk, unfortunately. Right, back to the points. So essentially, Jack Harding, by my reckoning, is going to drop, or is going to lose 18 points. So he was 2 behind, he will now be 20 behind. However, the question that needs to be answered is whether this now becomes a drop score for Jack. I'm fairly confident that it will, because he's been one of the most consistent drivers all year. He's rarely out of the top 5, so a 9th or 10th place finish, depending on where they drop him in the result. If it goes back a lap, it may end up being 10th place. That's actually going to make things very close for the championship still, because Jack will now be able to count some points that he'd previously been dropping, if you see what I mean. So although on the face of it he's 20 points behind now, I don't think that's actually going to be the case. I'll try and between races get clarification of that for you, but that is how I understand it. I think this will become a dropped score for Jack Harding, and the championship will go down to the wire later on, hopefully in slightly less miserable conditions. The drivers, though, are making their way down into the pit lane. Aidan Hills, Luke Herbert. Of course, Luke Herbert was second, wasn't he? I beg your pardon, 98 points he scores, so 18 will be the difference. 18 will be the difference, my mistake. I'm so used to Luke Herbert or Jack Harding winning, it's almost slipped my mind there that Aidan Hills has just taken his second victory of the season, and his second victory ever in the championship. So Aidan Hills, well, provisionally has taken the victory, because actually we haven't yet officially seen the checkered flag come out, but with only 4 minutes left on the clock, it's unlikely maybe that we're going to see a race restart. We'll hold out hope that we might get a restart. If we don't, though, that is how the point situation is. 18 points the difference, but this may well change the drop score situation. Well, the marshals and medics are on site, and the fact that the medics are there is not necessarily anything to panic about. There were some big hits there, and Colin Bysouth, unfortunately, one of those that really did come sort of piling into the accident zone. And so the marshals will just, as a precaution, be wanting to make sure that he receives all of the attention that he needs. Here's a replay. You'll see Bysouth right. Oh, in fact, that's no, that's Jack Sycamore that went into the back of Carl Garnett. I didn't actually see where Bysouth ended up in all of that, but there were several bits of contact. Sam Tatler involved. Garnett spins off to the left. James Kell, the green number 33 car. Tom Parker, poor old Tom Parker, probably wouldn't have been involved in that had he not had his first 2 off-track excursions, but he was, and he unfortunately comes away with a damaged car, and he's not the only one. It's a bit of it's a real parking lot up there, isn't it, with about 8 or 9 cars in total over the 2 incidents that we had at that part of the circuit, stricken at the side of the road. Well, we have now had confirmation, by the way, that the checkered flag has flown, so that is your result. Hills wins the race, Herbert will be second, and Blake Baldwin will be third. So they will be your 3 podium finishes. What awaits to be seen is where Jack Harding ends up, because he gained a position after the restart, but the results... I see that he gained a position on Colin Bysouth, but because Colin is involved in this accident, I don't think he's classified as a finisher. So it looks as though Jack Harding may end up 9th. We'll get to the points afterwards. For the time being, what we can tell you is that Aidan Hills has just won his 2nd ever race, and he is down in the pit lane with Brim.
Yeah, not only that, but Aidan Hills has become a hero in my eyes because he's got an umbrella. So thank you very much. Aidan Hills, you win the race in unusual circumstances, red flag, but congratulations.
Yeah, you know, a win's a win at the end of the day, and I couldn't see anyone overtaking me. I think we had quite a good pace, but when you're the first car to the track and to the corners, it's really difficult to judge where to brake and stuff. So I was just sort of doing what I thought was right, and obviously it was all to do with the start. I got off the line pretty well and just went around the outside, and we got into the lead. So yeah, it was really good.
And you had the advantage, of course, of then having that clear area in front of you. You were probably the only person out on track that could see anything.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Getting into the lead in these conditions is critical, because Luke was trying to pull out the spray behind me, and I saw him trying to do it, and it's just really difficult to see stuff. So credit to Luke and everyone behind to keep it clean, because it's very difficult to have a crash in these conditions. But we drove quite well with our heads, and it's a good 1-2 for our team, and good for Luke for the championship as well. So really good.
It's one of the team. It was really a team effort. Well done to you and the team for getting your car out and racing so well for that period of time.
Yeah, I've got to say big thanks to my dad for that. He's the brains behind it. I just do the easy bit. I do the driving. He knows what he's doing with the car. So big thanks to him, and yeah, we'll go again for race 3 later.
Awesome. Well done.
Cheers, mate.
Talking about Luke, here he is now. Luke, we're not quite sure what that means for the championship, because we're not sure about drop scores and things like that. But for you, leading the championship going into this one, you may have extended your lead.
Yeah, ironically, me and Aiden are teammates. He drove excellent, got a fantastic start, and then there's no way I could overtake. Down to the championship, if I'd have won that race, the title would have been mine, or if I'd have got fastest lap in second, the title would have been mine, because Jack needed to get within the top 4. So yeah, it goes to the last race, but I'm pretty confident. But in these conditions, anything can happen. But it's all thanks to all my sponsors, dad, girlfriend, mum. It's great. Even in these conditions, you're still having a great time.
Well done, and good luck for race 3.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
There you go. So there's Luke Herbert. There is the title going to be his? I don't know. We're going to find out very soon. One man who's won the title before, though, 3rd place here, James Blake Baldwin.
Hello. Yeah, no, that was rather scary, to be perfectly honest. I think I've aged. Yeah, interesting. Rather managing the aquaplaning issues as opposed to trying to go fast. It's literally survival.
Well, we were watching, and all we could see really was spray, and then a little Mazda appearing out of that spray at every turn.
Yeah, there's all going here, there, and everywhere. I have to say, nearly 13, 14 years of racing, that's the worst conditions I've ever driven in. Horrendous.
Does that mean it's the best 3rd place you've ever had?
Yeah, and the shortest race as well. I think it was about 1 lap, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Positive spin.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
Good luck for race 3 as well. There you go, the top 3 from the Mazdas. That's it for us for now. We're back here very, very soon with the first TCR UK race of the day. Join us then.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bryn. Well, it's been a lively day so far. And it's only going to get more lively, I think, as the day goes on. Here is confirmation of your result, though, for that BRSCC Mazda MX-5 Super Cup race. Aidan Hills takes his 2nd victory of the year, with Luke Herbert 2nd and James Blake Baldwin joining them on the podium. Will Stacey was 4th, Johnny Greensmith was 5th, and Steve Roberts was 6th. James Harris, Sam Tatler, and then Jack Harding, 9th place. And he really did not want to see that red flag come out. Colin Bysouth down in 10th. Rounding out the top 10, but whether or not he's classified 10th, we know not. Townsend is next from Alec Livesley and James Kell. Quite a lot of these drivers that were involved in that accident, and so they may not be actually classified in the final finishing order. Christian White was 15th, then it's Jack Sycamore, Xavier Brook, Tom Parker, Nick Rutter, and Alex Miller to round out the top 20. So, then it's George Grant, John Stack, Lee Patterson 23rd from the pit lane with Bradley Kent 24th, Mark Swarbrick and Will Stevenson 25th and 26th. And then the ones we lost, Daniel Morris, Mitchell Hale, Simon Baldwin and Richard Wicklin, but the list of actual non-finishers will, I think, eventually be a bit longer than that. Well, it was a short but dramatic race for the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. It was all about the start for Aidan Hills. Getting in front, getting the clean air is so crucial in this weather, and that's exactly what Hills did. From 2nd on the grid, he found the grip around the outside line at Redgate and took the race lead. Luke Herbert survived an early scare after contact from James Blake Baldwin, but they all got through Redgate safely. Sadly, the same couldn't be said when they arrived up at Schwann's Curve. The leaders got through okay, but there was drama behind. Simon Baldwin's spun was collected by Richard Wicklin, and that brought out a fairly lengthy safety car. When the safety car came back in, Aidan Hills had a sideways restart but was able to hold on to the race lead. It was lots of dicing behind. Will Stacey trying to find a way past James Blake Baldwin but couldn't do it, and then it all went wrong. 7 or 8 car shunt up at the top of the hill at McLean's, with several drivers involved, and damaged cars stricken to the side of the road meant that the red flag had to be thrown. Well, we do still have one more race to go. We do know that the championship battle in one form or another is going to go down to the wire. You do not want to miss the final round of the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. It will be coming up later on this afternoon at about 20 to 3, but of course with the weather conditions here today, times are subject to change, but about 20 to 3 is when we're due to get our final race of the season underway. Don't miss it.